Evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are live once again. This is Empire State of Baseball, July 31st of the year 2023. Gentlemen, this is a pretty big day or two in MLB with the MLB trade deadline upon us. We've had a lot of action since we met last week. We might have action while we are live tonight on the show. But this is a very fun time of year. If you're a baseball fan, if your team is in it, are you buying? If your team is out of it, are you selling? And we've seen it so far with the Mets, even just before the show started tonight. Mets dealing Mark Canha to the Brewers. And that could be the first domino to fall over the next 24 hours. I think Tommy Pham is next. Joe, got to ask, as a Met fan, how you feeling on this Monday evening?
Yeah, it's a weird time to be a Met fan right now. You didn't expect the season to go this way, where you're actually selling pieces at the deadline instead of buying. But overall, I cannot complain with what the Mets have done so far this trade deadline, being in the position they are in. The bottom line is this team was not going to catch the rest of the wild card teams this year. This team was not going anywhere. They have now taken themselves, by trading Scherzer, by trading two expiring contracts in Canha and Robertson, they've taken themselves and gotten younger. They've gotten more assets to build up the farm system, and they put themselves in a position where you can at least see what the plan is going into next year and beyond.
Is being a seller fun? In a way,
think it can be. I think if you sell with the like actually foresight to build something, I think it can be fun. I think it also allows for younger guys to come up and play. Like if you look back at the 2016 Yankees, you sold pieces off. You got some highly touted prospects. Now, granted, Clint Frazier didn't work out so great, and Gleyber has been a very good player generally. And then you were able to bring up Judge. So I think it can be fun. I think a lot of good things can happen when you sell. It kind of like, is just like ripping the Band-Aid off of the season. Like you don't have that last 2 months of like, are we going to make it? And then have the heartbreak of losing it at the end. You kind of, all right, we're done. And football starts in 3 weeks. So.
Yeah. But in another hand too, it could somewhat energize you a little bit, especially if you're a team like the Mets, where June, very frustrating month. July, for the most part, outside of that little stretch before the All-Star break, was a frustrating month. Now, as a Met fan, this is what you hope to see. You sell off some of these pieces who don't really have a role on next year's team anyway. These one-year contract guys like a Canha. We said Pham might be next. Robertson, again, he might be re-signed in the offseason. Who knows? But that was a one-year deal. Scherzer had the option. You're selling off these pieces. You hope to see the kids, and this applies to any team that's a seller. Maybe it gives you a little bit of a invested interest to watch and see what do you have next year. Do you have some sort of crazy second half run in you with the kids, which would be the absolute best case scenario, at least from a Met fan perspective. We just won our first series in what seems like 3 decades against the Nationals this past weekend, 3-1 in a 4-game set. We got the Royals coming up too. I mean, I've seen crazier things happen, but as a seller, I definitely look forward to the deadline itself. I do look forward to watching the kids the first few weeks after the deadline, see who gets the call, who doesn't. But in September, things start to tail off. If you get football season comes around, other activities come around. If you're a hockey fan, basketball fan, those seasons start off. So if the team really continues to fail and the kids don't really make an impact, you might start to lose some interest there in the second half.
I think I would think the general answer would be yes. And for the Yankees' sake, I've only seen it happen one time. Tom just mentioned before, that 2016 season. And boy, would I like to see the Yankees do something like that within the next 22 hours come the trade deadline, considering they've done nothing yet. So they're still in a position that they can try to move some pieces along, but we're going to get into it a little bit. I know, Joe, you have a point before we get into the lineup.
Yeah, I think going back to is it fun to be a seller? The Mets and the Yankees don't often go into full-blown fire sale mode. I think there's a difference between being in a fire sale mode and being what the Mets are this year, what the Yankees were back in 2016, where you're in a refocusing mode. You're trading expiring contracts that most likely, or in the Yankees case when they dealt Chapman, are not going to be on the team next year or need to be re-signed anyway. And that can kind of bring in new talent into the organization. The Mets just got Ronald Acuna's brother, Luis Angel Acuna. He's supposed to be a very exciting young player. That's a guy, listen, you trade a 40-year-old pitcher for, that could at least give you some enthusiasm as a fan to what's to come. But fire sale mode, like what the Oakland A's go through every 5 years, that's not really fun because
fun.
You're not attached to anybody.
And Joe just taking more and more shots at the poor city of Oakland, and
they deserve it. They deserve it.
Yeah, and we've been talking a lot about the deadline right now and what's to come over the next 24 hours, and we'll get more into that later. Running through today's lineup, we will start with the Empire Express, talking about the New York Mets and the New York Yankees, what took place over the last week, what's to come over the next week. A lot of that will be trade rumors. Chooch's pick of the week is back once again, so we'll hear from Chooch and what he wants to talk about this week, and then we'll get back into the deadline. And we were talking about what we think might happen. Well, we're going to give you, from each of us, one blockbuster trade that we think could transpire over the next 24 hours. For one particular player, there might be a trade drop during this show. So that'll be fun to see if that happens. And then we will wrap up tonight's show once again with a great game, a player to be named later, where each of us and the fans in the chat will try to take a stab at who the player is based on the clues supplied to them.
And that is our lineup. So let's get into it. The Empire Express, all aboard, because it's been quite the ride for both these two teams. And you look at the last week alone with the Mets, and we'll start there with the New York Mets. And I don't even want to get into how they did against Washington, although they did well, 3-1 series they took there against the Nationals. But the biggest stories were the Mets made some big trades. Max Scherzer off to the Texas Rangers. David Robertson off to the Marlins. Today, just within the hour, Mark Canha is off to the Brewers for their 30th ranked prospect. So we're seeing the obvious direction. That catalyst was David Robertson. Once we knew David Robertson was gone, we knew where the Mets were headed in the trade deadline. It was going to be sell mode there. So, Corey, when you saw that initial news drop of David Robertson getting moved down to Miami, what was your thoughts?
The absolute most initial reaction was a bit negative because it just came off of a win. And we were just saying the Mets have this 4-game sets versus the Nationals. Then you have 3 versus the Royals. They were about 6 games out in the wild card. And then you trade David Robertson in division to one of those teams ahead of you in the wild card standings. And the very initial reaction, and I'm victim to this as well, so I'm taking a shot at myself here too, is when the first thing that comes to mind is, all right, what are these player rankings of the guys you're getting back? And you're seeing some of these rankings. They were pretty bad. But the kids you get back in the Robertson deal, when you start to look into it a little more, you hear more about what the scouting community is talking about them. You see their most recent numbers. I mean, they just joined the organization. They had a pretty good debut already in the Mets minor leagues. But looking back on it now, not a bad trade. And listen, you want to bring Robertson back to be part of the bullpen of the future? Give him the same contract in this coming off season. It's a 1-year deal. The Marlins bought a rental, gave you a couple of young kids. These kids are not going to be in the major leagues next year, but helps to build up your depth. And who knows? Right now, when we got them from the Marlins, granted they were ranked in the teens, but these could be guys who give them 2-3 years of development, might end up being top 5 prospects in the Met system. Again, I don't want to over-exaggerate because they could also turn out to be complete busts and amount to nothing. But the Robertson deal, again, initial reaction, not good, was very upset. Most of Mets Twitter was, not going to lie. But now that you start to look at it a little more, not a bad deal.
Yeah, I think people have an obsession, as particularly fans, of these prospect rankings. So when the trade goes down and everybody jumps, what are they ranked in the person system? Are they ranked in the top 100? What are they ranked in MLB Pipeline, Baseball America, et cetera? And everybody goes to work trying to find out who these prospects are. You got to understand, in this particular case, Robertson was traded to the Marlins. The Marlins minor league single A affiliate or rookie ball affiliate plays on the fields in Port St. Lucie behind the Mets training facility. The Mets know these prospects as good as anybody in baseball. So I'm convinced that Epler and the front office knew who these guys were thoroughly. They knew exactly what they were doing. They put Robertson on the market earlier. Yeah, could they probably have gotten something ranked higher according to everybody? Maybe if you waited and let the market play out. But at the end of the day, I feel that the Mets in this particular case had an eye at least on one or two of these guys and said, these are the guys we want. We want to go get them. The Marlins were willing to oblige. And at the end of the day, you traded a 39-year-old closer on an expiring contract in a team that was 7.5 games back of a playoff spot for two young 18-year-old prospects that are going to say, we'll see. And if either of them becomes anything of value, the Mets will look like heroes. But it's going to take 4 years probably to see either of these guys in the big leagues.
And Corey just mentioned it before. I don't think there's anything stopping the Mets come the next offseason to re-sign Robertson.
Correct.
They brought Robertson on initially to be the setup man to Edwin Diaz. And when you have Diaz returning, well, guess what? Now you're back to where you were beginning of the season prior to the World Baseball Classic as those two as your main relievers. So you can easily get back there. I think it was great for the Mets to pull in that deal for a 38-year-old reliever. There was a lot of pundits did not like the trade, but hey, for the Mets, those two low-end prospects for the Marlins all of a sudden now become your number 7 and number 19 in your own organization. So there's a nice reshuffle there. And even though you look at the other two trades as well, you added your now number 2 prospect, your number 7, your number 13, and your number 19 within the 3 trades. So very nicely done there by the Mets to bring in that depth to your minor league organization. What do you got to say over there, Tom? I know you're stirring something.
I was just gonna say what's gonna be interesting. I know we're talking about maybe Robertson resigns a la what Chapman did in 2016. From the outside looking in, it just seems like the vibe around the Mets right now is so bad. Like with what happened with Scherzer and possibly Verlander. I don't know. I think it's gonna be we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I think a interesting offseason could be coming because it seems like the vibe in that clubhouse and what players would be saying on the way out is not going to be positive. So they're going to need to really spend to bring some guys in, I think.
The biggest one is Max Scherzer. Joe, what was that? Did you just see something?
Domingo Germán is warming up in the Yankee bullpen, and he was scratched today due to injury.
Yeah, that's
openers, baby. We're bringing in openers now. We've gotten to that point.
Also, Ben Verlander, Justin Verlander's brother, tweeted out about 5 minutes ago, the hot stove is very, very hot right now.
Oh, boy.
If you want to look into that at all, Verlander is rumored to be the Mets are rumored to be in discussions with both the Dodgers and the Astros for the services of Justin Verlander. So,
all right, I guess we could stay there. I know I don't want to jump around too much. So if we want to stay on Verlander for a second, and we could talk about Scherzer. Verlander, I think after the Scherzer deal, many thought that it might be best that Verlander just stays put as a New York Met. He's your ace heading to 2024. He's your guy leading the rotation. I know exactly with you two at least, Joe and Corey, that was pretty much the discussion there. But it looks like Verlander's got 1 foot out the door, either the Houston or the Dodgers right now. What kind of package is going to be worth it to lose your ace at this point in the season?
You need a top package. I mean, we for Scherzer, who is basically an inferior pitcher, you got a top 50 prospect in baseball.
I mean, that's ridiculous to say.
I wouldn't. He is a lesser pitcher than Verlander is.
Okay, I guess that's fair.
Verlander is the better pitcher right now. The contract is essentially the same. Verlander has an extra year option, but it looks like Verlander has a little bit more left in the tank than Scherzer does.
And how much did the Mets pay of
30?
Scherzer?
I think it was 30.5 over this year and next year.
Okay, and he's owed like 60 some,
62. I think he's.
So they paid like half-ish.
Yeah, about half-ish.
Okay.
But the big thing with that Scherzer trade though is that the option year the Mets owe 0, so it works out that they're paying basically everything that's left for this season The Mets have no money on Scherzer on the books for the 2024 offseason. So that'll be good to work with.
So with Verlander, I'm looking at a top 25 prospect and another top 100 prospect. I mean,
I don't know, because he's owed what? So he's owed $86 million. Well, not 86. 86 from this year and last year is prorated out.
And he's got a $35 million option if he hits 140 next year.
Yeah. So I mean, unless I don't know, you're gonna have to eat a lot of money again, I think, to get a top prospect for him.
Correct. And that's
but I expect a bigger return than I got for Scherzer because he is a better pitcher. So for me, I do not want Verlander traded necessarily unless an offer blows me away. Like if the Dodgers offer something silly, like they offer Bobby Miller and Pages, who's the number 4 prospect. He's an outfield prospect. And Bobby Miller, we've seen the kind of talent that Bobby Miller is. If they offer something silly like that, I'm driving Verlander to the airport. I mean, that's just the bottom line. But short of that, like to me, the Astros are not even in the conversation because I don't see what the Astros can give you, at least in terms of top prospects. That is a very depleted farm system. What they can give you that will improve the Nets going forward.
They have to eat money.
Right. I think with the Dodgers, you can get 2 or 3 pieces from them that are legitimately going to be part of your future, and you can pencil in basically starting next year. I mean, most of their upper level prospects are major league ready and just roadblocked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think
it'll be interesting on Scherzer though, and I'll throw this to you, Corey. I did want to talk about Scherzer. So Scherzer goes for Acuna's brother. Big deal because obviously we all know and love what we're seeing out of Ronald Acuna Jr. Now, who knows? The apple might not be too far from the tree, but that's a lot to put on the young Luis Angel Acuna. But Corey, what was your thoughts of the trade?
And when the trade was first rumored, there was thoughts that it could be Acuna and maybe a Brock Porter in the deal. And if that deal took place, I would rescind all of the negative comments I said to Billy Epler because I would have really loved that deal. But I still do. I still do like the deal, even 1-to-1. You're getting a very good prospect. You're getting $40 million, which you know he was taking that option. So you're getting $40 million off the books next year that could go towards other pieces as you're trying to rebuild. So I really do like this trade. Of the 2 pitchers also, Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, to Joe's point, Verlander was having the better season. Of the 2, if I had to go into the season with one next year and trade one this year, it's Verlander who I want next year over Max Scherzer. So at this point, I don't know what's going to happen with Verlander. It's starting to trend one way and then the other. And it seems within like a few hour time span, it shifts one way or the other. So I don't know what's going to happen right now. But for that Max Scherzer deal, I do like it. I like the trade. You're getting a good prospect. And you look what Ronald Acuna Jr. just said, too, the other day. His brother, in his opinion, and maybe he's just trying to be nice and compliment his brother, but he said his brother at his age is more talented than Ronald Acuna himself was at that time.
I mean, was he going to say, yeah, my brother sucks?
Well, exactly.
That was a big pile of shit. He's terrible. He's worthless. I mean,
but you could only dream. And that's the thing with these prospects. Sure. You could only dream because at the end of the day, it really is a crapshoot. Of all the sports, you could make the argument that baseball prospects is the biggest crapshoot in professional sports because you have guys like Jacob deGrom, who you never even heard of until he made his major league debut and put up the numbers he did. Then you have top prospects like Fernando Martinez, who the Mets didn't trade for guys like Roy Oswalt and Roy Halladay, guys who could have helped them in that mid-2000s team. And what does he do? He comes up and doesn't even hit 210 for the Mets, and his career is basically done. So prospects really are a crapshoot. You could only dream. And in what's a somewhat lost season, I'm dreaming because if I have the brother of the National League undisputed MVP, I'm happy with it. For a 40-year-old arm and $40 million off the books, let's roll.
Listen, I mean, at the end of the day, Scherzer is a diminishing asset. I mean, he's 39 years old. He has not pitched particularly well this year outside of a few starts. We remember what happened last year. He had a great first half of the season, dealt with an injury, came back maybe a little too soon, spits the bit against the Atlanta Braves and the San Diego Padres. And at this particular point, it's fair to wonder how much he's going to have left in the tank. You know, he has about a 4 ERA this year. That he at this point has made himself a replaceable asset. So if you can get something of value for him because another team is trying to win it all, I think that was a good move by the Mets. Acuna looks like he's going to be a very good prospect. His comps are more towards Ozzy Albies of all things, ironically, than his brother himself. But that's exactly the kind of player that you would take on the Mets. An Ozzy Albies type would be a staple on the Mets for at least a decade, and that's something that could help them. So for me, I think it's a win-win. The Rangers replaced DeGrom in the rotation. Now they have Eovaldi out as well. They went out and got Jordan Montgomery to fill Eovaldi's spot. And the Rangers are trying to go for it. So there's, at this particular point, not much the Rangers have in the way of choice. They went out and got who they thought was the most affordable pitcher and the best pitcher for the price. So for the Mets, here's the other thing with the Mets. They're an old team. Let's no bones about it. I mean, trading a 39-year-old pitcher off your team for a 20-year-old prospect and replacing him, I mean, drops your average age by 2 or 3 years probably on the team. So this team needs to retool a little bit. They need to get younger. They need an infusion of youth, and this is the start of it. So I don't see a Scherzer as an irreplaceable asset for next year. I think the Mets did very well here.
A bit of over 21 hours ago until the trade deadline at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We'll see if Tommy Pham follows that trio of Mets that did get dealt over the last few days. But let's go to the crosstown side of it. Let's go to the Yankees. Now, the Yankees have done nothing. And about a week or so ago, many thought that the Yankees were in line for Shohei Ohtani. And then they got swept by the very same team that carries Shohei Ohtani, effectively turning them from buyers to sellers after that deal. Cody Bellinger, the Cub that was long traced to the Yankees, that Joe was even saying on this show, he had a mock trade, a perfect mock trade for Cody Bellinger to become a Yankee. Well, guess what? The Cubs are now in it. They have the longest win streak in baseball right now. They're also one of the hottest teams over the last couple of months. The Cubs have now declared themselves buyers, and they made a move just recently for Heimer Candelario, another player connected to the Yankees. So, Thomas, what are the Yankees actually buying within the next 22 hours?
I mean, at this point, there's nothing to buy. Like the things that you would have needed, and potentially too, if you think you're going to be able to make some run, they're gone. Other than Tommy Pham, I guess if you say Tommy Pham, he's going to be available. You know, I know Corey had a mock trade for him. Plays left field. Yes, that does improve the team. Does it improve the team enough to make them a threat? No. Even though Pham is having a very nice year. It's not out there anymore. The real question is do they sell? But they don't have really anything to sell other than Gleyber. Gleyber's the only thing that I think that would make sense to sell that has value. I don't think it makes sense to deal Clay Holmes. I don't think it makes sense to deal Michael King.
I think there's a lot of value in giving up a starting pitcher that gives up 7 earned runs to their division rival yesterday in Luis Severino. No, there's no value in the players they have. They can get maybe mediocre pieces for maybe Bader or IKF, but you're not going to get much out of the players that they can possibly.
I think Gleyber has value. I do. Gleyber, I know Joe, you're Gleyber's biggest fan.
You're going.
Gleyber's a very good
sell. Yeah, Tom. Gleyber's That is not a retool. If you try to trade guys like Gleyber Torres and Clay Holmes, who you do have control of, those are straight up sell moves. Sell moves that I would be behind on, by the way. I'm not saying I'm not.
I wouldn't be behind Clay Holmes. Gleyber, I would be at this point because I think you could get something decent back for him. You can just then put what's his name? Peraza in to just kind of fill the gap in the lineup. Let him play every day. Let him see what he is. That is an option. But yeah, exactly. What are you going to get for Bader? What do you get for IKF? Nothing. It's done.
The problem with the Yankees is that they're basically devoid of prime talent. I mean, they have it's a 4-person team.
Oh, I mean, they have talent. They're just the talent.
It's Judge, Cole, Rodon, and Holmes, and that's their team right now. The first baseman is old. He's been the worst hitter in baseball for the last 3 months. DJ LeMahieu is clearly beyond his relative usefulness. He could still play the field a little bit. Donaldson's old. He's washed up. I mean, there's no talent on the team currently. Their rookie shortstop hasn't at least developed this year. They're being patient with them to their credit, but he's definitely not pulling them out of it this year. He's trying to find his way. So the problem is the Yankees have immovable pieces and they're stuck with them. And to me, I don't see a way. The Mets have a way. They're selling assets that are useful to somebody and bringing back talent. I don't see that option for the Yankees. I don't see where it exists. Even the talent that's decent in Cole and Rodon, their contracts are so crazy that most teams won't go near them or won't give you anything decent for them.
Yeah,
So
Joe, I think about
something here.
I think about that David Robertson trade that happened last week and how Met fans got on the team for not getting enough pieces out of David Robertson. And I'm at the point where it's like, if the Yankees can sell anybody for anything, I'll be happy. There's not a prospect. There's not like prospects I'm targeting. Like, oh, we better get a top 20 prospect for Luis Severino. I'm happy if we bring somebody back with a pulse for Luis Severino at this rate. If they can get something out of any of these guys, that'd be awesome.
I DFA Severino tomorrow. Nobody's paying him this year to pitch. That's
bad.
And nobody's signing him. Somebody's going to sign him on a proven deal next year. You cannot let Severino take the mound again. That's my opinion on
with Severino. I don't know who's more cooked right now, Severino or myself with sunburn from the beach this weekend.
You are
Carrasco.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I at this point, I feel like the best case scenario for the Yankees is that they continue to be bad. They have their first losing season since 1992, 1993. And they actually make changes. And that changes isn't just getting rid of Aaron Boone. Because has Aaron Boone been great? No. Is he the problem? No. Like the problem is does Hal get his daddy mad enough or like his dad mad enough to then just clear house in the front office and say, you know what? You're all gone. You're all fired.
Done.
We're cleaning house. I just don't think he does. I don't think he has it in him. I think Cashman stays. So it also just kind of doesn't matter if they just meander to a 500 record or if they have a losing season. I think nothing changes besides that they fire Boone and that doesn't fix anything.
And then they replace him with Boone 2.0 in the offseason. I mean, that's pretty much
it.
Has to be an organizational clearing. Fishman's got to go. Cashman's got to go. I don't care. Like everybody who's been under Cashman's watch over these last 20 years got to go. It's got to be a full clear out if the Yankees don't make the playoffs this year, and that's where they're headed. And in the next 22 hours, I just don't know if there's a conscious Yankee fan out there that thinks that there are players still out there that the Yankees can acquire that will save their season. Their problems are internal.
There's not. If the Yankees traded for Juan Soto.
Tom, can I get a point out? There is no external point on this team. There's no external solution. Everything's internal. This system has been broken for the better part of 13 years. Probably longer than that, because we could chalk up 2009. Yeah, it was a good team, but it was a team they purchased. For the last 25 years, this team has done really nothing else but just get to the playoffs, meander to the playoffs, back into the playoffs, have a great regular season, and then find their way into a first-round elimination of the playoffs. I'm done with it. This organization philosophy needs to change. Can't do it anymore.
The problem right now is even if you fire the GM, the next GM is coming into a situation where he's got no flexibility. I mean, DJ and Stanton are here for the next 3 to 4 years each. I mean, that's these guys. Stanton Stanton might be playing the worst bang for his dollar of anybody in the major leagues. Anybody that plays, let's throw Strasburg off to the side. That might be the worst contract in baseball. I mean, who else is playing with a contract Stanton size that is given less production than Stanton has? Anthony Rendon, maybe?
That would be the one.
It's probably the only comparable one I could say.
And Rendon's contract is up before Stanton's.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Stanton, the thing that Stanton can, or Yankee fans can say with pride about him, is in big games and in the playoffs, he does show up, and he has been a very dangerous player in those situations. But yeah, he's always hurt.
Yep. And listen, and we'll see what happens. I know Jay
Used to
Hertz in the
fit
chat mentioning DJ LeMahieu, but listen, we're gonna keep an eye on Twitter throughout the show because, like we said, news could drop. Is it a trade? Yeah, now it's X. Could
No.
something happen with the Mets? Could something happen with the Yankees? We'll wait to find
Nothing's
out.
gonna happen with the Yankees.
Well, you never know. We'll wait and see. But while we wait and see, Rich, how could they go ahead and follow us? Because we know we'll be reporting on Twitter once it happens.
What do I tell them to follow us on? Do I tell them to follow us on X? Do I follow us on Twitter? I was told it was Twitter, but the X is the logo. What's the deal now? What's happening?
Very
I don't
good
know.
question. Couldn't tell you.
I got X/Twitter. So make sure to follow us on X/Twitter or Twitter. Use FKA Twitter. Follow us on X at ESB Podcast, at G Gory for Corey, at JR Pugs for Joe, at Rich J Rivera for myself, and at T Waspel for Tom. Give us a follow on the new and improved Twitter, now known as X. And also, the New York Strike Exchange gets revealed every Friday on Instagram and X as well. So make sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Empire State Baseball, X at ESB Podcast for the New York Strike Exchange. Now, let's get into some Chooch's pick of the week. Chooch had a bad record this year. We all know this.
Oh, yeah.
Chooch is just as bad as the Mets and the Yankees this year. 2-5-1. He picked up a win and a loss somehow, some way during All-Star Week, correctly predicting the NL All-Stars over the AL All-Stars, but then incorrectly had Adolis Garcia to his eventual first-round knockout in the Home Run Derby. So let's throw it to Chooch now for Chooch's pick. Where is this video? Here we go. Chooch's pick of the week.
What's up, ESB crew? Chooch is back with Chooch's pick of the week. And yes, the leopard blanket is still here. This week, we're going to have the Marlins versus the Phillies in a 4-game set. These are two teams fighting for a wild card spot. The Phillies got all their good pitchers going up this week. And I think this week, Bryce Harper is going to break out of his slump. Yes, he is hitting, but not for power. I think he's going to have a very good week, hit a couple of home runs. And I think the Phillies have too much talent on their team to lose this series. I think they're going to win the series. What do you guys think?
All right, and Chooch fully embracing the leopard blanket now that it's even infected our broadcast graphic here. So he's got the Marlins and the Phillies, 4-game set. What do you guys got in this series?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to go with a 4-game set. I'm going to go with the boring pick of a 2-2 split. Both teams right now trying to fight there for the wild card. Marlins with the big trade we were just talking about earlier with David Robertson. Would love to see Robertson get some action there in this set. So I'm going to go with an even split.
Yeah, I'll go 3-1 Marlins in this. I don't like either team, to be honest with you. And this is the frustrating part about the Mets year. The Phillies and Marlins, neither of them are good teams. And all the teams that the Mets are behind, these teams are nothing special. They don't inspire you. They're flawed in very deep ways. And I don't like either team. I think they're just above 500 teams. So I'll go Marlins 3-1 in this. A little momentum off the trades.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing, Joe. I'll take the Marlins 3-1. Maybe they add another piece. Maybe Gleyber Torres joins the squad midway through the series, really gives them more of a boost. I'll take the Marlins, and they fight themselves into a wild card spot.
I'm actually going to agree with Tom and Joey. I'm going Marlins as well. 3-1 on the series. Listen, they still have good offensive pieces in there. Luis Arias is still bordering around under 400. I don't know where he's at right now. I think he's probably down to the 380s at this rate. I don't know. But yeah, the Marlins are still looking good. They're still as serious as they were when they got off to that hot start to begin the year. Obviously play it in an uninspiring at least because the Braves are just that awesome this year. But the Marlins, Phillies fighting for that wild card spot, and the Marlins, I think, get the series. I like Tom's point too. You might add Gleyber Torres to the mix. Who knows? So you never know. But our fans who've known us since day one know about Twitch. Is that correct, Joe?
Yeah, you can download Twitch and subscribe to Empire State of Baseball. The link is in our link tree on both Instagram and Twitter. You can hit the subscribe button. You get notified anytime we go live and have it on all your smartphone devices or web browser.
Joe hasn't embraced the X yet. He just called it Twitter. So I guess there's still Twitter over there.
No, it was Twitch. Right. It was the Twitch thing. I didn't call it Twitter.
No, but you mentioned the bio was still in Twitter.
Oh, yeah. you put that wrong in the thing, so I
I didn't
blame
put it
you.
wrong in the thing. I said
Oh.
X parentheses Twitter. We're all getting used to it. All righty, let's move on. MLB trade deadline, like I mentioned multiple times, just about 22 hours or under 22 hours away from the big deadline tomorrow. I'm looking forward to working a full day and just getting absolutely blown up by Twitter or X or whatever the hell, and finding out who's going everywhere. Over the last couple hours, there's been just deals spinning. We just mentioned Heimer Candelario just went, and AJ Pollock just got traded to the Giants. And I'm sure we're going to see more Paul Sewell to the Diamondbacks. But we're going to do this again. Like we did 2 weeks ago with the Mets and Yankees, we're going to get into some last-minute blockbuster trades. And before Ben Verlander drops the ball on Justin Verlander here, I know, Corey, you want to talk Justin Verlander to start things off. So what do you got?
Yeah, definitely want to talk a little bit of a Justin Verlander trade, and I have it to our favorite O's. Little O's action here. Mets sending Justin Verlander to the Orioles, acquiring 2 prospects, DL Hall, their 9th ranked, and Joey Ortiz, their 5th ranked prospect. In this trade also, the Mets do need to eat some of that contract. So I have the Mets basically eating half of the contract that's left, pretty much right down the middle, $30 million. That covers what's left of this season. It covers half of next season. And again, vesting options. There is that 3rd-year vesting option, which pretty much is going to hit bearing a crazy injury. You cannot give money to cover potential options. So they can't cover any money there. So this would be an interesting trade. Orioles, I couldn't even tell you the last time they were in the playoffs. This is a good time for them to really make a mark, get a big name veteran pitcher who's been there, done that before, has won the World Series in the past, bring some veteran leadership to that team. And the Mets, again, you're restocking your system. You're not getting all the money, but you're getting some money off the books next year. DL Hall, you are getting a pitching prospect back. That's been the one complaint for a lot of these trades. The Mets aren't really getting pitching back. It's been a lot of positional players over the last week. You did get pitcher, though, in the Canna deal. And Joey Ortiz, listen, he's an infielder. Orioles do have a lot of infield prospects. I mean, you have Gunnar Henderson right now at the major leagues. Holiday is their 1st-ranked prospect at shortstop. Joey Ortiz, another middle infielder. But again, you could never have too much talent at the upper end of your farm system, because even if they don't have a spot, we already know Lindor is a shortstop of the future. There's a very good chance that after the deadline tomorrow, Ronnie Mauricio could be called up, and that could be your second baseman of the future. Jeff McNeil probably is going to play mostly outfield down the stretch here. But you do want to restock that system, because guess what? There's going to be another offseason coming up. There might be some other trades to make, and that could be a name you swap out for another guy down the line.
Yeah, and we know the rumors have Verlander headed to either the Los Angeles Dodgers or the Houston Astros, and it could be by the end of this show. But listen, the birds make sense. The Orioles need that frontline starter right now to really establish them as the prime team in the American League East, and they have some solid 3, 4, 5 guys, but I don't even think they have a pitcher on their current roster that I even call a number 2 in most good rotations in baseball. So they desperately need to make a move. And it, again, most likely won't be Verlander, but it needs to be somewhat of the Verlander variety for them.
They're a match for sure. Their farm system's loaded. I would push for one of the outfielders. The Mets are devoid of outfield talent in their minor league systems. So I would push for a Cowser or a Kyrgyzstan in there instead of the Ortiz. I think you're on the right track, though, in terms of what you're looking for in return. Paul has been one of those guys who's played jump rope in the top 100 list, being in and out of it. But I would push for one of the 2 big young outfielders instead of Ortiz. I know they have a plethora of young infielders with him, Westbury, and Jackson Holiday, but I would really push for one of the 2 outfielders.
Tom. Sorry, go ahead, Corey.
No, I was just going to say, and that might be a situation where it depends on how much money you are willing to eat. In this projected deal, I had the Mets eating basically half of what they could pay. Again, investing option, you cannot give money for an option. Give a little more money, maybe get a better prospect. The other thing I want to call out real quick before turning it over to Tom, I don't know if Justin Verlander is a big fan of Chesapeake Blue Crab, but he's also got to waive that no trade clause. So we'll see what happens with that.
More like
all right, well, I like it. Well, Thomas, I know you could appreciate the O's trying to get a front of the line starter, because I think that's the situation you got going on in your deal as well.
That's true. Always looking for Birdland options here. I have the Orioles going out and acquiring Dylan Cease from the White Sox for 3 of their prospects, and these are 3 top 100 prospects. Again, we know we're going over the list of how that doesn't always matter, but it's 3 top 100 guys going to the White Sox. I also think similar to like Joe was saying, of like maybe you want this guy over that guy based on position. You kind of tell the the White Sox, probably other than like Jackson Holiday or someone maybe like your 1, 2, 3 guys. Hey, you pick 3 or 4 any other guys. This is what you get. I think Verlander for Corey's trade, yes. Like if you think like that's he's a veteran, he's done it before. I just don't. The Orioles are such a young team. I think Verlander would be such an albatross there because he's like their dads. I don't know how he would really get along in that clubhouse. I think it'd be a really weird situation, although he is a very talented pitcher who's done it in the postseason. Dylan Cease, you're going to get him for the rest of this year and the next 2 years for arbitration. So you're going to pay more for him. But he is a younger guy. I feel like he fits more what that team has going on. They need to acquire more pitching. Again, he isn't a guy who's done it in the playoffs, but I think for what the Orioles are building, this makes more sense. Also considering that they haven't yet opened up the checkbook to start really paying free agents. And this gives you some control. Rich, I saw some faces there. What do you think?
I don't know how I feel about the notion of Verlander wouldn't be a good fit for the Orioles because he'd be the grandfather of most of these young kids in Baltimore. I feel like that's the sort of guy they need to kind of rally around. They need that veteran.
But like their whole thing is like the kids and like the kid energy and playing that brand of baseball.
But having one guy who's been there before and pitched the biggest games. I mean, the fact that you look at the roster and Kyle Gibson is the veteran of that team is kind of crazy. I feel like you need to have somebody established around these kids so they can play around. I don't know. Am I being a little old school here?
A guy like Verlander legitimizes the Orioles. I think the Orioles fly under the radar because they're still kids. They're still going to be in shell shock. Verlander legitimizes that team because there's not going to be shell shock going into game 1 of the NLDS when Justin Verlander's pitching game 1 and game 5. These kids go in with a different mindset instead of, being absorbed and too big for the moment. They're putting a guy there who's been in the moment, who's won a World Series, who can go there and shoulder the load and pitch a shutout if he pitches well and take the pressure off of those young kids. I think that's a huge thing. I don't know if they get that with Cease. I think you're on the right track in terms of value for Cease. I would want one of the top 5 kids. Westberg is the infielder coming in. He's a little older than Jackson Holiday or Kyrgyzstan. I think you need a little bit more value because Cease has 3 years of control. But I agree. I think the O's need a top end of the rotation guy. If they have aspirations of winning the World Series this year, I think Verlander is the guy more than Cease. If they're looking for something long-term, I think the guy to go with is Cease.
That's why I think I wanted to go with Cease, because I think it kind of, it's like now we have this window. We're not attacking this year and next year. The Orioles thought they're going to be better this year. I don't think they really could have thought that they were going to be leading the AL East at this time. So I think you want to attack a larger window and you get more time with Cease than you do with Verlander. But I mean, either one does really help that starting pitching staff who you can't have a ton of faith in a big spot in a playoff game.
The one thing about the Orioles I bring up is the owner, who's having a family dispute with his kids, is old and very ill. They want to win him a championship. So that is the only thing that I'll say is that he's not long. The ownership is not long for this world, unfortunately, due to health concerns. And the kids are fighting, I believe, about who's going to take over the team when he passes. I think there's a sense of urgency to make this team a winner because I think the ownership group is going to have to be forced to sell the team sooner rather than later.
It's like a callback to those early 2010s Detroit Tigers when Mike Ilitch was basically on his last legs, and it was the same situation. They had their win now mentality. They had their win now window between that 2010 to 2013 Detroit Tigers team that was good. Unfortunately, couldn't pull up before he passed on. But yes, I think there's definitely going to be more of a inclination to do so. I'm surprised at this point right now, the Orioles haven't made a move yet. And again, we're a day away from this thing blowing over. So, and the Orioles do have to make moves. Again, addressing the front line is a big deal. I don't know if it's going to be JV at this rate, but Dylan Cease is a good fit for this team. It's a good package there, Tom. I think DL Hall going in there. I know Corey just mentioned it before. I think DL Hall going back in that deal would make sense since the White Sox are just lost some pitching capital already in Giolito and Lance Lynn and now Dylan Cease, but getting a pitcher back would be nice too. All righty. Joe, let's jump over to you. You also have a White Sox deal.
Yes. I have a big one. Tim Anderson and Eloy Jimenez going to the Los Angeles Dodgers for four prospects, 3 of which are in the top 100 of Major League Baseball: Dalton Rushing, Andy Pages, Emmett Sheehan, and Maddox Bruns. And the Tim Anderson and Eloy going back the other way. Tim Anderson obviously had a very down year. Eloy, we know, has tons of talent, but is always injured. But the Dodgers have been missing one thing this year that this trade gives them, and that's depth. The Dodgers' depth has taken a hit in the past few years. They've let a couple guys go, including Cody Bellinger, guys who've been flexible. So I could see Tim Anderson coming over, playing second base for them, even if they wanted to. Their middle infield's been decimated by injuries. And something about Eloy getting out of Chicago, to me, I know he's injury prone. I know that follows you no matter what, but something about a guy like him going to the Dodgers, it just makes me think that he's going to realize his full potential in a Dodger uniform. And again, Anderson control for next year. He's had a terrible down year, but sooner or later he's going to turn it around. I think putting those guys in the LA situation would turn both their seasons and their careers around.
I was going to say, breaking news, guys. Anthony Rizzo got a hit, so that was exciting. But then Stanton then proceeded to ground to a double play. There was first and third, 1 out, inning over.
Look at that.
That's it. That's what you had. That's all you had.
Anthony Rizzo getting a hit. I think is breaking news. It's exciting.
All right.
That is true.
The only issue I have with this deal here, Joe, is Eloy Jimenez is going to be on the same team with JD Martinez. So who's playing a corner outfield spot between two guys who really should be DHing?
Probably Eloy for the time being. It's not a perfect situation, but Martinez is only going to be there one more year, or was it a 1 year deal or 2 year deal? I'm not even sure.
I think it was a 1.
Yeah. So, I mean, Martinez could be gone next year and they could just plug Eloy right in at the DH spot.
Yeah, and I think Tim Anderson this year, it's a very interesting season, not in a good way for him,
1 year
of course,
deal,
because you're looking at Tim Anderson. The last 4 seasons, he's always hit over 300. He won the batting title in 2019, and this is a guy who, up until recently, has done absolutely nothing. He actually is a little better since the All-Star break, so that's why his average is back up to 245. But he's been absolutely terrible from his standards. He's a guy that when he's on his game, 15 to 20 home runs, but it's more about the average. High average guy, OPS usually around the 800 mark. His OPS this season is 578. 578 is terrible, but I think if you're going to take a gamble, this is not a bad gamble to take. And I also like Eloy Jimenez, a guy who's had a lot of freak injuries over the last few years, but that's a guy who I think has some good pop, a guy who'd be nice in that Dodgers lineup alongside Tim Anderson too. So I do like this trade, Joe. We'll see if it happens. I think Tim Anderson is a piece that definitely can be traded within the next 24 hours, but I guess time will tell on that.
Anderson's stat line is just shocking to me.
It is.
Because I knew it wasn't good, but I didn't know it was this bad. I mean, I think he just hit his first home run on Saturday.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken. They were celebrating like it was a big deal. Like, oh, he finally got the monkey off his back. But who'd have thought this year with the rule changes with the shift, he'd be even better. than what he's been over the last few years. It's amazing what's going on. Maybe the change of scenery will help. But Anderson going within the next 20 hours makes a lot of sense.
There's something up with Chicago White Sox organization that they have had chronic underperformance year after year from guys with long track records of performing. I mean, Tim Anderson, aside from a few health concerns, these are legitimate players, and they have gotten nothing out of them. The Tony La Russa thing threw that organization through a loop. I never liked that hire to begin with. That there's something. I think Anderson especially is a guy. The second he steps foot out of Chicago, he's going to be a different player. He's going to be back to the player he once was.
We'll see. And we have one more trade. It's mine. I'm going to stay in with an NL West buyer here. And again, another interleague trade with the Tigers and the Diamondbacks. Now, Michael Lorenzen and Eduardo Rodriguez was reported earlier today that the Tigers do plan on shipping both pitchers by tomorrow. I got lazy, and I just have them getting shipped together to the Arizona Diamondbacks, who can use some more starting pitching. They're obviously their head man Zach Gallen is on his way to potentially winning an NL Cy Young this year. If Spencer Strider has nothing to say about it, that's going to be a great battle between those two. But also Merrill Kelly just came back off an injury. They also have Zach Davies at the bottom end of the rotation, and they've been relying on a lot of kids, guys like Ryan Nelson, Tommy Henry, who's currently hurt, Dre Jameson, who's currently hurt. I have Henry actually packaged in this deal. So the Diamondbacks could use some middle of the rotation starters. Rodriguez has had one of his best years of his career, 2.95 ERA for him. Lorenzen, the all-star as well. So that's the deal I got going on. The number 9 and number 5 ranked prospect going back to the D-backs, and pretty good value going to the Tigers rather. And the Tigers getting pretty good value out of this trade. What do you guys got on this one?
I don't think there's any shot both of these guys get traded together. The price of starting pitching is astronomical. I mean, we just saw Savali move from the Guardians today, and he went for a top 30 prospect in baseball. So I actually think you undervalued both of these guys, and I think that the Tigers should deal them in separate deals. I think they could get a lot more than this for each one of these guys, and not that these pieces are bad or couldn't lend to a Tigers rebuild, but I just think with the amount that starting pitching is going for right now, and you're talking top 50 prospects in baseball, you have to separate those two. Each one should be able to land you a top 50 prospect when you send it out.
I will say from a Diamondback standpoint, I love the trade. I'm all about the Diamondbacks this year. I'll tell you what, if the Mets do not make the playoffs, and I don't think they will, despite maybe a nice second half run, I'll root for the Diamondbacks. Fine. A team that hasn't, young players in there. Let's go Diamondbacks if the Mets are out of it. So as a Diamondbacks fan, quote unquote fan, I like the trade. I kind of agree in the sense that, maybe the Tigers could get a little bit more, but the Tiger season is a lost season. So see what you can get out of these guys. Michael Lorenzen, Eduardo Rodriguez. Eduardo Rodriguez, very nice year with that nice clean 2.95 ERA. So both would definitely be a big value to that Diamondback staff. And I hope the Diamondbacks do this deal. I don't know if the Tigers do, but I can definitely see both getting traded at the deadline.
I think you're onto something there, Corey. I propose next week we all come up with a new team that we're rooting for the rest of the season. Clearly our teams have given up, or if they haven't given up, they just aren't gonna contend. So we should just pick a team and rooting interests and just align to them. Obviously, Birdland here. But you guys,
that's cheating. You can't take the first place.
You go into your own division.
I've been Birdland for well over a year at this point, so I've earned my spot.
I'm actually kind of with this, but we should be taking teams that are not first place in their division. We should be taking teams that are
if you picked them when they were last place in the division last year, and you adopted them, and then you helped nurture them to the juggernaut that they are.
You could only do that as a Yankee fan, because no other fan base would ever root for an in-division rival. The Yankees are the only ones who are so overly spoiled with championships that they can root for an individual rival. That would never, ever happen. That the only other person that could do that is a bunch of Patriots fans. That's it.
I gotta say is if you go all the way back, and we're gonna plug YouTube in a little bit, but if you go back on YouTube and go to our preseason prediction show, Corey Favs had the Angels holding on to Ohtani and making a run at the playoffs. And guess what? Corey's onto something.
They're
That's
doing it.
exactly where it's headed to right now. Because the Angels have made some big moves over the last few days with CJ Cron, Randall Grichuk, and Lucas Giolito. But I thought that was an interesting note. I needed to shout out Corey for that because that's something else. And the Angels are looking like they're on that pace. We'll see what's going to happen, though, within the next 20 hours of the trade deadline. And we'll keep you posted on our social medias, Twitter and Instagram. Tom, what's the case with Instagram here?
Well, on the positive note, it's still called Instagram. They haven't changed their name to or to some other nonsense. You can follow us on Instagram at Empire State of Baseball. You can follow our individual accounts at Corey Favs, at JR Pugs, at Rich J. Rivera, and at T. Waspel. You can check us out for our post-game recaps, our post-trade recaps, as Joe kind of debuted. We've gone live at times for close games that matter, so we won't be going live for close games for the rest of the season because none of our teams have games that matter anymore. But check us out there, doing some fun things, and yeah, that's all I got.
Live is fun, Tom. I'd do it again for just for the hell of it. That was a lot of fun getting on the horn with you and doing a little play-by-play to color commentary on the games. So a lot of fun there on Instagram. But also on Instagram, you can check out our post of our games like this one. It is a player to be named later. Corey, what is our Mets player without telling us?
All right, we're going to start off with a few hints here. Very first hint, this player started his 9-year career with the New York Mets, and his final season was actually with the New York Yankees. So he did play for both teams, starting off with the New York Metropolitans. The second hint you can see on the board, this player was primarily a starting pitcher, but did spend some time in the bullpen over the course of his 9-year career. And last but not least, his best seasons were within the rotation of the Oakland Athletics, our favorite Oakland A's. That's the team mentioned a lot during our season this year.
This feels like this should be like easy, although no one's jumping out to me.
Keep an eye out in the chat as well to see if anything pops out.
Gotta hide the chat. I always forget.
9-year career, so it was short.
Oh, he didn't spit. Okay, he wasn't with the Mets for 9 years. He started with the
Correct.
Mets. Okay,
Started with the
okay.
Mets, and it was the
Correct.
Yankees.
That's why I'm like, man, this has to be pretty easy. Okay, so
Jason Isringhausen played more than 9 years.
It is
Yeah,
not
yeah,
Isringhausen.
yeah,
Yeah, Isringhausen was a stud for a while. Came up like with the Mets like 97, 98-ish. But yeah, he had a nice career with the A's too.
Aaron Small.
It is not Aaron
Ooh.
Small.
it's a good guess, though. I don't know if he was a Met, but
I'm still keeping an eye on the chat. No answers in the chat just yet.
Corey, do not be kind and give us a fourth hint.
I am not doing it this week after I gypped myself last time.
Joe currently in the lead of our standings, by the way. He's leading me and Tom by just 1. Corey back by 5.
I will say, whoever this guy ends up being, I'll make sure to just kind of flag him in my head for Immaculate Grid in the future.
Oh, it's killer.
Yes, it would be a very good.
It'll be a good Met A1. I have plenty of Yankee A1s and Yankee Mets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stumped.
I mean, I imagine he ended up being a reliever with the Yankees, right? You would think of his end of his career, spent some time in the bullpen. At that point, he probably was a reliever coming over.
Ironically, not.
Ironically, not. Yeah, so it's not like a Farnsworth or like
Not a Farnsworth. Last chance for romance, gentlemen.
In an eater, I'm assuming a back end guy.
I'm gonna clock out on it.
Yeah.
I say Corey, you get the point, but if you want to give us another
Victor
clue, see if we
Zambrano.
can get it.
Not Victor Zambrano. It is Corey Lytle. Started his career with the New York Mets. ended it
That's
with
why
the
it's
New York
embarrassing.
Yankees. I know it was a very tragic end, unfortunately, because he did have that plane accident in that last year with the Yankees too. So very unfortunate ending. But it's Corey Lytle. Yep, a little
Yeah, and
immaculate.
you can't give that as a hint.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
that'd be a dead giveaway. So you don't want to do that.
Come on, Reg.
Oh,
The Yankees.
the
Come
pun.
on.
I was thinking of him
Player
as like a
named
Philly,
later. This
too.
player pitched in 7 seasons for the New York Yankees.
It's an AL
This
All-Star.
player
There's
was an AL
another
All-Star
guy.
in
Oh,
2010.
Jesus.
He went 18-8 with a 4.19 ERA that season. This player would pitch for only 3 teams in his career. He was 32 in his final season in Major League Baseball.
Oh, so this is another guy whose career ended a bit early.
Ching-Ming Wang.
I was going to say that.
No, not Chiming Wong. Good guess.
Good guess. Player would pitch for only 3 teams, 32. He was an all-star too, so he was a good player. At least briefly.
7 seasons with the Yankees, 1-time All-Star, 4.19 ERA in the season where he was an All-Star, and 32 in his final season in Major League Baseball after pitching for only 3 teams.
Phil Hughes?
That is correct. It is Phil Hughes.
Oh, really?
Wow.
That is Phil Hughes right there. Yes. Good stuff. That was Thomas who got that, right?
Let's go.
No, it was
No,
me.
Joe.
Yeah.
Good work. Like, you sounded like Tom for a second, man.
Don't
Sorry.
you dare.
It is Phil Hughes. And I would say Phil Hughes, I was actually at his very first start of his career. One of the most hyped Yankee prospects ever. I mean, I was thinking like when we were talking about Volpe earlier in the year and how hyped that was, I was trying to remember the last Yankee prospect that had so much hype around his call-up. And it wasn't Glaber and it wasn't Judge. Phil Hughes was that guy because everyone had Phil Hughes pegged as the next Roger Clemens for the Yankees. As part of that generation trade with Ian Kennedy and Jabba Chamberlain. But Phil Hughes is our guy tonight for the player to be named later.
More prospects the Yankees messed up.
Yep. Long list of that. All righty. Well, we're going to wrap this thing up. We're a little past 9 o'clock now. Corey, best way to check out our stuff on the tube.
Go ahead and download the very popular YouTube app. Like, share, and subscribe to us at Empire State of Baseball. You're going to get post-game recaps. You're going to get shorts. You're going to get clips of various shows that we do. So definitely go ahead, download YouTube, like, share, and subscribe. But again, for those of you listening live tonight for episode number 55, please tune in again next Monday, August 7th at 8 p.m. EST for episode number 56. As we mentioned before, we'll be airing on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. But until then, let's give some thank yous to everyone out there. Joe, who would you like to thank tonight?
I'd like to thank my wife, who is hard at work with our little pugga. So she is going through it and going through all the things that pregnancy does. And women that go through this are heroes. And my wife's no exception. She's doing a great job.
Well, congratulations there, Joe.
Yep, congratulations for sure.
Have fun. The journey. And then when Joe's
that's the one
tired,
thing
when Joe's tired on an episode next year, I don't want to hear anyone like, "Oh, Joe, we understand."
And it'd be nice after yelling at each other for an hour on the podcast to just talk over childcare after and just have a nice peaceful conversation.
Joe, I think
All right,
Joe and I
well,
Joe and I will start our own podcast. Just sad
Tired
baseball,
dads.
sad baseball dads.
Sad baseball dads. I'm behind it. But yeah, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Corey, for taking the hosting duties today. And yeah, it's been great. Trade deadline's an exciting time for Major League Baseball and for a lot of teams, especially the teams that are in and even teams that are not in. We said selling's fun too. So Corey, let's send this off here, man.
Yep, let's go ahead. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. Choosers in the chat. Love to have you over here. Also want to give a special shout out to the Ball Busters, Rich, myself, and the rest of them. We have a couple in the chat listening. So thank you, guys. We will be going to the championship next Sunday. So more to come on that, too. But any big news over the next 20 or so hours, you know where to find us. Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. Take care.